Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Final Score. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about all around the sports world. We're going to talk about NFL Contender Pretenders, the World Series, and the start of the NBA season.
Starting off with the MLB, the Atlanta Braves just beat the Houston Astros in 6 games in the World Series. We interviewed Ian Anderson, who pitched, was it Game 2 or Game 3? What did he pitch?
Game 3.
And he had the second longest no-hit ball in World Series history. He went 5 innings without allowing a hit. It was just an unbelievable season for them, dealing with Acuna's injury, dealing with other injuries, battling through, and being able to take down the cheater Astros.
Yes, sir. The star of the World Series was George Solaire, won World Series MVP, which is insane. He hit huge homers time and time again. It was really cool to watch, especially because he wasn't on the Braves at the start of the season, so they picked him up, and he ended up winning them the World Series. So
it was definitely an amazing season. I feel like we were joking when we had Ian on the podcast, like, what if the Braves went to the World Series next season? And they did. So if you guys want to see our podcast with Ian Anderson, it's going to be in the earlier episodes. You can scroll down to our IG. I think it's episode 4 at the Final Score podcast on all platforms. Definitely look at that as an exclusive interview with Ian, and hopefully, if we're lucky, we'd like to get him on again in the future.
And another thing is, just to show how dominant the Braves were during this series, the Braves shut out the Astros in the shutout game for the first title since 1995. So they were very dominant this year. They just have a really good all-around team, and keep in mind they did this all without Ronald Acuna.
Exactly.
Who is their star player.
I can't imagine how more dominant they would have been with Acuna. It was just an unbelievable season. Some people are going to say they overachieved, but I think if they overachieved here, I think about what they're going to do next year. Yeah. I mean, with Acuna.
It was a very impressive run, and definitely glad to see them beat the Astros.
Everyone was talking about the Astros, saying, oh, well, it doesn't matter that they cheated because they still won, and look at them now, they're in the World Series, and they didn't even make it to Game 7, so... Right. I don't want to hear it. There were a ton of cheaters. Jose Altuve's a cheater, and they got put in their place by the Braves.
Yep.
And they're going to be put in their place next year by the New York Yankees.
If we can make it.
Yeah, I know. So that should move us into the NFL. We're going to be looking at every team, calling them a contender or a pretender. Obviously, there's going to be more obvious ones like the Jets as a pretender or, the Bucks as a contender, but I think we're definitely going to look at those middle ground ones, too.
We're going to just go... Want to do top 2 in each division?
Top 2 in each division. Yeah, we'll do that. So we'll start in the AFC East.
Yep.
So starting off with the Bills, contender, pretender, I'd say pretty easily here they're a contender.
I agree. I think that they are a contender, and potentially you could make an argument for the front runner to win the Super Bowl.
I agree.
But, yeah.
And I'm going to say the next team here is the Patriots. I'm going to say they're a contender.
I'm going to say that they're just slipping in under contender because they've played really solid recently. They've won 2 in a row. Their whole offense looks like it's starting to click again. Mac Jones is looking very promising, and they seem to be calling good plays. They're using Damian Harris well. They're using Jacoby Myers well. They're using Kendrick Bourne well. So I think that they're going to keep just on the roll that they're on.
Exactly, and I think if you look at this offense, like you said, Bourne, Jacoby Myers, Nelson Aguilar, Damian Harris, and then you have J.J. Taylor, Brandon Bolden got 2 touchdowns 2 weeks ago each. You don't really look at that, and no one's jumping off. That just shows you not only how well is Bill Belichick, but Mac Jones is really taking advantage of every weapon in that offense.
I think he's very underrated. And keep in mind, they did take a hit with their defense. They lost Stephon Gilmore, but they're still finding a way to look unfazed by it.
Moving into the AFC North, starting off, we'll actually do every team in this division. Yep. Starting off with the Ravens, sitting at 5-2, coming off of a bye week. I'll probably mention this on another podcast, but Ravens are going to be my Super Bowl pick, so I'm going to say contender. I'm a huge Lamar fan, so it's kind of the reason that I'm making the pick, but I'm going to stick with an obvious contender for me.
I'm a huge Lamar fan, too.
Yeah, biggest Lamar hater I know.
I'm going to say they're a contender for sure. I don't think they're going to make it to the Super Bowl, but you can't not say that they're a contender. I think that's pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that team, they shouldn't be. I mean, if you take Lamar out of the equation, you're looking at a team of 2016's best running backs in the NFL and Mark Andrews.
Yeah, but I think their defense is starting to step up, and
It's starting to step up.
I think they'd be a contender with any of the top 7 or 8 quarterbacks in the league. I just think I think
Maybe.
and Marquise Brown is a top 10 wide this year.
Statistically wise, he's definitely putting up Tyreek-esque numbers.
Yep.
He's stretching the field. He looks great. I'm happy that Lamar is able to have that connection
Yep.
with a wide.
Moving on to the next team, they've been very, very surprising. The Bengals, they come out and they destroy the Ravens, and then
Lose to Mike White of the Jets.
so it makes me think they're either a pretender or they're a very hot and cold team.
I'm going to say they're a pretender. I think this is a great quarterback in Joe Burrow. He's one of my favorite QBs in the league. One of the best wide receivers in the league, even in his rookie year. You have a great running back. But I don't love, I believe their coach is Zach Taylor. I don't love Zach Taylor. I don't love the way this team is totally built with protection when it comes to that O-line. They've got great weapons and a solid defense.
And I think the only reason they're really even in the contention of being a contender is because the connection Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have had. It's been really incredible, but they
had a pretty easy first few games.
And then they did come out and beat the Ravens, so it's hard to say that they're a pretender for me. I am gonna say that though because they lost to the Jets, and that's unacceptable. So I'm gonna say that they could beat a really good team if they made it to the playoffs, but they also have a lower floor than you would imagine for a 5-3 team.
I think they'll probably make the playoffs. I just don't see
them going far. Right?
Yeah,
you don't see them as a contender.
Moving on to the Steelers, pretender.
Pretender, I think that you can't be a contender with Big Ben as your quarterback. Najee Harris is having an unbelievable season. He's going to either win Offensive Player of the Year or Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
But
I really like Mike Tomlin as a head coach. Ben Roethlisberger, like you said, is not a good enough quarterback to be viable, to go deep in the playoffs, or even to make the playoffs. When you have really good weapons with Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris, and you still have a really good defense, even with the injuries they've taken, it still isn't enough with Big Ben. He's got to derail that team. They're a pretender.
And moving on to the next team, I think that this is another pretender, the Browns. I think they've been taking a lot of hits right now. They got Nick Chubb. They had, unfortunately, Kareem Hunt was placed on IR with a calf injury. That was sad to see. Baker Mayfield's going through a left shoulder injury.
Odell Beckham today was announced that he's no longer a part of the team.
So they're just taking hits left and right. I think that they're going to have to try to take this rest of the year and figure something out, and hopefully next year they can bounce back with a fully healthy team. But this year it's looking like it's starting to look out of reach.
What I'll say is Kevin Stefanski, in my opinion, is a great coach. I actually really do like him. I think they've got a really good defense with some really good players, but I don't think Baker's the guy. I saw a comparison the other day that he's like Carson Wentz without the media, or with the media. Carson Wentz is like Baker without it, and I just don't think Baker is that guy.
I think Carson's better than Wentz. I think Carson's better than
he probably is.
Baker. The thing about
and
Carson
what does that tell you about Baker?
Carson, even though the record doesn't show it, he's been putting up numbers, and he looks like he's really settled down. He looks like at the beginning of the year he looked a little antsy. Looked like he started off pretty rough. But he's starting off doing what it takes to win games. And they had an unfortunate loss to the Titans last week.
Barring that disgusting pick six. I don't know if you saw that. He got sacked and pretty much just dropped the ball in the defender's hands. But other than that, I agree. Baker is not the guy in Cleveland. And I think it's becoming pretty apparent because they have such a star-studded roster. How do you have Odell Beckham? He's not Giants Odell anymore. But how do you have Odell and not just hit him on a slant and let him take to the house? I mean, I don't understand. Pretender.
Moving on to the AFC South, we're going to look at the Titans, and we're going to start with the Titans. And it sucks.
It's an awkward conversation now
because you're looking at the 6-2 team, 3-0 in their division. They've won 4 in a row. They're extremely hot. Tannehill's starting to look better. AJ Brown's starting to look better. Julio's starting to look better, and then they're 99% of their offense, and Derrick Henry is out at least to the playoffs. So they're gonna make it to the playoffs because they got a good head start with Henry. They're 6-2. I think they're gonna keep finding ways to win games that they can, but I think they won't be able to compete with teams like the Bills, like they beat them. I mean, that's all Derrick Henry. I mean, when they beat the Bills, he had 150 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. So they have to fill that gap. They have to find someone else to rush for or get those 150 yards and 3 touchdowns.
It's gonna come down to
and it's so
Tannehill.
unfortunate to see.
Because last year everyone's like Tannehill's top 10 quarterback. People
Right.
were saying Tannehill putting up the same numbers as Mahomes. Lamar's not a top 10
Right.
quarterback. Tannehill's better. Well, now Tannehill needs to step up and be this offense because you have AJ and Julio, who you need to get the ball from.
And previously, I was talking about how bad Tannehill was earlier this year. I was saying that he's underperforming, but I think this is going to be the real test because he didn't really need to perform. They're 6-2, so I don't think you can say that Tannehill's having an awful year because all they're doing is feeding the ball to Henry. So I think if he can step up now, that's going to really show what he really is. Because I think if you take away these other guys in the top 10, you take away Dak's weapons, you take away Lamar's weapons, you take away Josh Allen's weapons, they're still going to find ways to win games. So that's what we're going to have to see.
So what do you take as
Ryan
a consensus? As a consensus,
they're a contender because I think they're going to make it to the playoffs, and if Derrick Henry can come back even 90% or 75% of what he normally is, he's still the best back in the league, and I think they're a contender.
I think they're a contender with Henry and they're a pretender without, because I'm going to bet on Tannehill not. Even if he plays good in the regular season, without Henry, I don't think he's going to show up in the playoffs, in my opinion. So that's the way I'd put it.
And another reason I'm saying contender is because there's almost no shot they miss the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because they're going to win their division right now. They're, 4 games in front of the Colts?
Yeah, they've got a very sizable lead, and that leads us right into the Colts,
and
who are 3-5. They're a pretender.
And it's a shame because you look at their weapons. They got Jonathan Taylor, who looks amazing. They have Michael Pittman, who is starting to look like an elite receiver for this year.
He has more receiving yards than Justin Jefferson this year, only behind CeeDee Lamb in second-year wides. He's having a phenomenal year. Taylor's having a phenomenal year. Wentz is looking pretty good. It's nice to see him get back into a role. We got to hope he stays healthy.
Their defense doesn't look bad either.
I think they're well coached.
And they're just losing games by a pretty small margin. And it's just those types of games tend to keep hitting you because, like the Giants, they've had so many close games, and those swing games, those really matter because then you look back in the season, the Colts could be 5-3 right now. So even though that their team is overperforming, the record doesn't tell that same story. So I think that they're going to be a pretender for me.
I agree, and that moves us into the AFC West. Once again, we're going to do all of the teams here because they're all 500 and above. Starting off with the Raiders, I am going to say pretender. I think they're 5-2. I think they're a well-built team who's had an unbelievable amount of drama and trauma as we add Henry Ruggs into the equation, as he's probably done in terms of his NFL career. If they get Odell, I will change my stance on this and change him to a contender because I think Derek Carr is able to make some wide receivers really play well. But with this team right now, for everything that happened to them, I know they're 5-2, but I'm going to go as far to say that they lose this week to the Giants, and I think they're a pretender.
I very unfortunate to hear what happened with Henry Ruggs. So that does suck for the NFL world, but it also sucks for the Raiders because now you're looking at Hunter Renfrow as being your number one target other than Darren Waller. So I'm going to say they're a pretender with or without Odell. I think they're having a good start. I just think they're not that team. I think they're not better than 2 other teams in this division. I think that the Chiefs and the Chargers are both better than the Raiders. I think it's just not showing right now. So I think that I'm going to say a pretender for the Raiders.
Moving on to the Chargers, contender, pretender. I am going to say contender, only because even though Herbert is playing pretty atrocious these past few weeks, with the amount of weapons he has, with the rookie coach looking pretty good, a good defense with Derwin James, Joey Bosa, I'm going to say they're a contender and Herbert's going to figure this thing out. Even if he doesn't, they're still going to go to the playoffs.
I definitely agree. You look at the Chargers are such a good team. You look at Austin Eckler, then you have Mike Williams, who is playing unbelievable this season, and you have Keenan Allen and Jared Cook. So your targets are unbelievable. So I don't understand why Herbert's having this slump. It's not like
sophomore slump happens in every sport.
Yep. And then moving on to the team that's underperforming this year, the Kansas City Chiefs, coming off a win against the Giants on Monday Night Football.
I want to say pretender so bad because I think we're starting to. Yes, the Chiefs have been in the Super Bowl for 2 straight years. Mahomes.
2.
Okay, so Mahomes is 1-1 in the past 2 years. I think we're getting caught up in that, and we're not maybe realizing how bad the Chiefs are playing right now. Giants are a terrible team, and they barely beat them in primetime football. After your team has time to prepare for this game, know you're playing a not great opponent. I'm 100% worried about them. I'm gonna say contender just because it's Patrick Mahomes, but I'm very worried about them.
So I'm going to go on the complete opposite side. I'm going to say they're playing so unbelievably atrocious, but they're still 4-4. They're still finding a way to win games. I think that they're going to figure this out. I still think they're one of my top 3 Super Bowl favorites.
They probably are. I mean, they still are a top 5 Super Bowl team, but I am definitely worried about the Chiefs, and I think more people should be. I know you've got Tyreek. I know you've got Clyde, Darrell Williams, whatever. Pat Mahomes, Kelsey.
And that's another thing. Clyde isn't healthy right now, which doesn't affect too much, but it's still nice to have your number 1 back.
I think the offense, putting up 17 points on Giants defense is pretty bad. And the defense is really atrocious. Spags is a guy I love as a Giants fan, but he needs to figure out that defense. And if they don't figure out that defense, Bills are going to beat him in the playoffs.
That's
my call.
I think the
or the Ravens, in my opinion.
I don't think that the Ravens can, just because the Chiefs are still averaging a top 4 points per game, even with how atrocious they're playing. I think even though Mahomes is throwing these interceptions, they still score so many points, and their defense is so bad, and they're still winning games. I think soon enough, they just traded for Melvin Ingram. I think that's gonna move the needle. I think they'll figure it out, and I think that the only team that can beat them, in my opinion, would be either fully healthy Titans or the Bills.
No, Melvin Ingram was definitely a good move, especially for the value that they got, and it does help bolster that defense because they need all the power they can get.
Right.
I think they're going to get exposed in playoffs by Bills or Ravens. Maybe not exposed, but I think both those teams are going to bring it, and it's going to be an interesting playoff matchup. Leads us to the last team in the division, Pretender. We don't even got to talk about it, the Broncos.
And we're only going to talk about one team in the NFC East. The Cowboys are, as Giants fans, I hate them so much. But you can make the argument that they're a top 2 team in the NFC.
You'd make the argument they're a top 3 team in the NFL. I mean, that offense is ridiculous. That defense, how they turned it around in 1 year with Dan Quinn is ridiculous.
I look at the Vikings, and I really think that they're a solid team. And they lose to a Cooper Rush-led Cowboys offense. So I don't see how the Cowboys, if they were Dak there, they win by 40. Cowboys offense
I hope the Cowboys get blown up in week 1 and that they don't get the first round bye. But for right now, they're one of the best teams in the NFL.
Moving on to the NFC North,
We'll do the Vikings too.
Talking the number 1 seed in the NFC North, you have the Lions.
Yeah, Dan Campbell, just a little brief talk. I love Dan Campbell. He's probably my favorite coach in the league. Over Joe Judge. I was going to say besides Joe Judge, but it's time to wake up. But Campbell, I love you. I love the energy he brings and everything. But I'm sorry, man. You are not a good coach to get blown up 38-0 by the Eagles.
It's really bad.
You got DeAndre Swift. Don't tell me Swift can't get a touchdown in that offense because I know he can.
Yeah. And then moving on to the actual number 1 team in the division, the Packers, 7-1, obvious contender.
Don't even need to talk about
that. They really are. They're 7-0, and they've won 7 in a row, And their only loss, everyone started to worry so much about the Packers, including me. They lost 38-3. And I'm thinking,
is Aaron Rodgers blowing it on purpose? That's the
stuff that people talked about right away. And then he told everybody to relax. He wins 7 in a row, beating the only undefeated team in the league, not anymore, on Thursday Night Football last week, the Cardinals. So, obvious contender. The Vikings, in my opinion, are a pretender.
I'm actually going to flip that, and I'm going to say contender. I think it might be the first one we disagree on. I only say it because of the weapons. I don't think Zimmer's a good coach, and I think they're going to lose in the playoffs or maybe just miss the playoffs and Zimmer get fired. But here's why I say contender. I don't think Kirk doesn't always show up.
No, Kirk
on
is
prime time. But if Kirk shows up in the playoffs for one game, they're going to win. Because you have Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook. You still have Alexander Madison. You got KJ Osborne, an absolute dog, in the slot. And I think they might even win a playoff game. They're so star-studded.
The problem is, how are they going to get there, in my opinion? Because look at their remaining schedule. They're 3-4 already. They already have a disadvantage right now. And then their next few weeks, they have the Ravens, the Chargers.
No.
They've got the Ravens, the Chargers, the Packers, the Niners, the Steelers, the Bears, the Rams, and then the Packers.
Oh my God.
Again. So I don't think they're even going to make the playoffs, and frankly, I don't even think they're going to come close. I think they're going to be...
You make some really interesting points here. I wasn't aware of their schedule, but you know what?
I don't even
It's our first disagree on a take, so I think I'm just going to have to stick with it. Their weapons are going to carry them, and they're going to win some of those games that they shouldn't, and they're going to lose some of the games that they should. So, like they should have beat the Cowboys just the other night with Cooper Rush. But I love JJ. I love Cook.
I
think they're going to get it done, and at least make playoffs.
Yeah. Moving on to the NFC South, this is a pretty stacked
I already
division.
hate that take, but let's move on.
You have the Bucs, obvious contender. We're not going to talk about them. The Saints,
pretender. Now that James is gone, I'm going to say pretender. Unless I know Kamara's your boy.
I am going to go out on a limb and say they're going to win the Super Bowl. No,
just
I think that they are
Derrick Henry, so I don't. I think Derrick Henry's like the only back who can put the team on his back.
See,
and I love Kamara, and even if they get Odell, I just don't see it really working out for them.
See, this is where I'm gonna have to disagree with you because
2 disagrees in a row.
So here's the thing: you look at the Saints, you look at Jameis. Jameis started the game down 3 when he left.
These are facts.
Trevor Siemian is terrible, but yet they still beat the Bucs by 10 points. and then you're gonna see Taysom Hill move in. He was their quarterback last year when they needed him, and they still won a lot of games. So I think the Saints are still gonna have an easy ride to the playoffs. They just beat the Bucs. Their defense is amazing. Kamara is great with any quarterback. They don't even have weapons, so it's not like they're gonna lose out on receiving. Jameis, look, I love Jameis. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league, but what was he really doing? He wasn't putting up 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. He wasn't doing anything that Taysom Hill can't do because
that's a good point. That's a good point.
So I don't.
You got me there.
And then the Panthers, pretender.
Panthers are a pretender. Falcons don't even warrant a conversation. Moving on to the most interesting and best division in the NFL, I think the NFC West. Starting off with the Cardinals, that's a no-brainer. They're definitely a contender. I think same with the Rams. They're both contenders for the Super Bowl. I think we could both agree there.
100%.
Now moving on to the garbage 49ers. Jimmy G, time to turn it in. You're garbage.
I think even though the records disagree with this, I think that the Seahawks are more of a contender than the Niners because they're 3-5.
It's not even a question.
They look horrible, but once Russ comes back, I think they can have a ride and they can be a legit contender if Russ comes back because they still Geno is Geno and he's not great, but
I would like to sit down and have a conversation with Kyle Shanahan and say, hey, you're one of the best offensive geniuses in the NFL. You know, he was on that Falcons offense. He was the offense coordinator when they had the biggest choke of all time. You know, it's just a great piece to his resume. And then you traded for Brandon Ayuk and you trade up for Trey Sermon. You know, Brandon Ayuk last year showed potential of maybe superstar, and you don't even use him in the offense. And it's not like he's performing bad because he doesn't get the ball. And it's not like Trey Sermon played one game and played great and then he didn't play him. Oh, wait, you did. He played amazing and you didn't play him again. And I know Mitchell's good, but you need to utilize your backs here. I mean, I don't understand sometimes. You know, he's such an offensive genius, but how can you not utilize Ayuk in your offense? Because I guarantee you, if he utilized him like he utilizes Debo and like split that 50-50, that team would maybe be 4-3 or 5-2. I just think Shanahan makes a lot of questionable moves.
Another reason I think the Seahawks are a contender, in my mind, they're 6-5 because in their schedule they play the Texans, Bears, and the Lions. So they're 6-5.
Even Geno can get that done.
Exactly. So I think that they're going to be a contender for me. And
that should just about wrap up the NFL. Did you want to discuss a little bit of the NBA or save that for another pod?
I think we can do a full pod on that.
All right, so that should just about wrap up the podcast. One thing I did want to mention about my Saints take is I'll say the same thing I did about the Raiders. Since Michael Thomas is out for the year, since Raiders and Saints are the top candidates for Odell, if either of those teams get Odell, I can see them being a contender, and we definitely made some good points in the Saints. But other than that, that should just about wrap things up. This has been
Final score.